This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good evening everyone. So they asked me, so what's the one topic you don't know anything about? I said, raising children. Okay, that's what you're going to speak about. Welcome to the Gateway's Pesach program. It's my first year here. And luckily they asked me to speak about the most difficult subject in Judaism. So by way of introduction, let me share with you a very important thought. Never believe one word that any speaker tells you. You know, people always say, oh, I heard somebody once say. Okay, how do you know it's true? I once heard a story. Okay, by the way, most stories never happen. None of the stories are true. They never happen. I heard from Rabbi Victor Miller, 90% of Gedolim stories never happened. And even the story I'm telling you, he never said that either. So, the point is, as a listener, as somebody who's learning, the most important thing in development and learning is knowing the source of something. Meaning you have to know, oh, I have a really great idea on Chinuch Habanim. Where does it come from? Who decided? You heard a speaker? Where did he get it from? What's the source? A person always has to know, where does something come from? Does it come from Chazal? That's the most important source. If Chazal tell us something, we could take it to the bank. It doesn't matter if it's 100 years later, 1,000 years later, or 10,000 years later. Divrei Chazal, Chayim v'Kayamim, the words of Chazal last forever. They last until the end of time. If Chazal tell us this is a proven way to raise children, then you could take it to the bank. Does it come from a Rishon? Does it come from an Achron? Or is it just mere legend or a story that somebody spun? It may be true, it may not be true. Whenever somebody's learning, people like to say, oh, you want to hear a good Dvar Torah? Sure. I don't remember who said it. You don't remember who said it? So what value does it have? Maybe somebody made it up. Maybe it comes from who knows where. There are many things that people say over that don't have any source and may not even be true. It is critical for a person to always know, what is the source of the matter? Is it a Gemara? If it's a Gemara, it's Misinai. Is it a Medrash? It's Misinai. Is it a Rishon? Certainly we're mamin in all the words of the Rishonim, but it's not on the same level as the Gemara, and Achron is not on the same level as a Rishon. It's always important to know the person who said it, when did he live, where did he live, what context did they say it in. Okay, with that introduction, let us begin. We're going to examine what I call the 10 commandments of raising children. And I'll tell you the truth, where do we find such a thing that we could make any subject into 10 commandments? We know the Rebbeinu Shalom alone took the Torah and he narrowed it down into 10 commandments. But I'll sort of rest on the shoulders of a great person. Rabbi Victor Miller used to take subjects and break it down into 10 commandments. So these are my personal 10 commandments. You can make your own 10 commandments. There's nothing special about these as opposed to others. These are just 10 suggestions that are found in the words of our great sages that I think could be very helpful when it comes to raising children. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let us examine one of the first encounters in the Torah of a child and their parent, and that is Yaakov Avinu and Esav. Yaakov comes masquerading as Yaakov Avinu and Yitzchak. Yaakov comes in masqueraded as Esav, and Yitzchak says, "Vayomer Yitzchak el benoi." Yitzchak says to his son, "Ma zeh miharta limtzai b'nei? How'd you find it so quickly?" Vayomer, and Yaakov says, "Ki hikra Hashem Elokecha lefanai." Rebbeinu Shalom caused me to find the animal rather quickly. Immediately, Yitzchak's response is, "Get over here, kid. Let me feel you. Is it really you, Esav? You don't seem to be speaking like Esav. You're not using the same verbiage, the same sprach that Esav uses." And Rashi, in fact, points out that what threw Yitzchak off was the fact that Yaakov Avinu invoked the name of Hashem. Esav would never invoke God's name. The fact that this child, this man standing in front of him, said, "Ki hikra Hashem Elokecha," that threw Esav off. Is this in fact Is this in fact Esav? Maybe it's Yaakov. So Yitzchak says, let me come here, please. Let me feel you to see if you are Esav. We're upon the pasuk says. Take a look in pasuk Chaf Beis. We're still in number 1. Vayigash Yaakov el Yitzchak Aviv. Yaakov come close to his father Yitzchak. Vayimushehu. Yitzchak feels him. Vayomer hakoil koil Yaakov v'hayodayim yedei Esav. You sound like Yaakov. You feel like Esav. Why does he sound like Yaakov? We would have said because of what Rashi pointed out on the last pasuk, because he invokes the name of God. Says Rashi, no, there's another thing that threw Yitzchak off. You know what it was? The fact that Yaakov Avinu uses the word please. He says, shemadaber b'loshen tachnunim, kum na. Yaakov says to his father, please get up. But what did Esav say to his father? Yakum Avi. Get up, Tats! Get up! So listen carefully. There are two major distinctions between the way that Yaakov spoke to his father and the way that Esav spoke to his father. Yaakov uses the name of God. Yaakov says please. Esav does not use the name of God. Esav does not say please. I'm sure we're all familiar with that. This is elementary level understanding of Chumash. We all know Yaakov invokes the name of God. We all know Yaakov is courteous and polite, and he says, please. Comes the Heilige Chassam Sofer, and he says he heard from his Rebbe, Rav Nosson Adler, there is a third distinction between the way Yaakov speaks to his father and the way Esav speaks to his father. And this distinction would seem to indicate that Esav had more respect for his father than Yaakov did. Says the Chassam Sofer, take a look at number 5. Vayaskam hu matamim. Esav also made delicacies. Vayaveh la'aviv, and he brought it to his father. Vayomer la'aviv, and he says to his father, Yakum Avi, let the tata get up. Yakum Avi, third person, let the father get up. Like, will the rabbi, won't the rabbi, could the rabbi? With all due respect to the rabbi. By the way, if you're a rabbi and you hear those words, with all due respect, duck, very low. Rabbi, with all due respect, you might want to run out of the room. But Esav seems to use a very respectful tone. What does Esav say? Yakum Avi, will the tata get up? And what did Yaakov say? Look back in number 4. Kum na, get up. First person, second person, or third person? Kum na, get up. What is that called? Second person, get up. So wait a second. I thought Yaakov is the respectful one, the courteous one. Yaakov says to his father, get up! Esav says to his father, will the tata get up? It seems like Esav is more respectful to his father than Yaakov Avinu. You ever notice that? You ever observe that? What's going on here? On the one hand, Yaakov says, please, he invokes the name of Hashem, but he's talking to his father second person, and Esav speaking to his father third person. Says the Chassam Sofer, he heard from his great Rebbe, Rav Nosson Adler, who's called the Chassid Shebekahuna. Esav spoke to his father the way Goyim speak to their father. Goyim speak to their father third person. Yidden speak to their parent second person. Goyim speak to their parent in a distant form. Will the father get up? Jews speak to their father second in the second person. Kumna, get up. Why is that, says the Chassam Sofer? Says the Chassam Sofer, it's the opposite of what you would have thought. By a Jew, a person is so connected to their child. There's a concept, bra mezaka abba. A child brings merit to the parent. When a child does a mitzvah, the father has an aliyah. There's a concept, zoicher chazdei avos. There's something called zechus avos. The child is literally the leg of the father. Why is a child called the leg of the father? Because every level that a child goes, the father is elevated. Klal Yisrael are united as one. We find by Yaakov Avinu, shivim nefesh, one soul. By Esav we find 14 nefashos. Listen carefully, says the Chassam Sofer. Even though it would seem superficially that Esav is speaking with more respect, no. By the Goyim, parent and child have a disconnect. There's a generation gap. There's a lack of closeness. And therefore, they speak in this distant way. Will the father get up? Yidden do not say, will the tata. We don't do that. That's not the Messiah. The Messiah is tata. Why? There's such a korva and such a closeness and such a bond and such a deep-seated connection between father and child that it's not appropriate to speak to your father in third person. Why is that? Listen carefully. In Parshas Re'eh, it talks about almost the worst aveira in Kol HaTorah Kula. The mesis. The mesis is someone who seduces another person to be oived avodah zarah. Look at the pasuk in number 8. Ki yisischa achicha. If your brother persuades you. Ben imecha, the son of your mother. Oy bincha, or your son. Oy vitcha, or your daughter. Oy eshes chekecha, or your wife. Oy re'acha asher kenafshecha. Or your friend of your soul friend. Who does the Torah consider re'acha asher kenafshecha, your friend who is like your soul? You hear this? The Torah is referring to the closest people to you in your life. Your brother, your son, your daughter, re'acha, your friend, but not stam a friend. Re'acha asher kenafshecha. Says Rashi, you know who your closest friend in life is? Ze avicha, your father. You hear this? Rashi is identifying, if you had to pick, who is your soul friend? Who is closer to you on the deepest level of anyone in this world? It's your parent. It's your father. Interesting. What? And mother. And mother. Chayra. If I were to ask you, how do you define being a parent? What is the job? What is the role? If you had to sum it up in one word, what is a parent? So, of course, I know the Mishnah and Kedushin. Mishnah and Kedushin says a father has to teach his kid Torah, give him a bris milah, pidyon haben, teach him a trade, maybe teach him how to swim. These are all the responsibilities of the father. No, I didn't ask you the duties of the father. I asked you to define the role. What is the definition of father in the Torah? I guarantee you could stop 1,000 people and nobody would ever say what Rashi in Chumash says. And this is a Rashi I'm sure everybody's seen, but it's a Rashi that we glance over. Please take a look at number 10. Ve'ata. This is Yosef HaTzadik talking to his brothers. Says Yosef, Lo yatem shalachtem oisihena. You guys didn't send me down to Egypt. Ki ha'elokim. God sent me. And you know what I'm doing here? Vayasimeni le'av le'paroi. You know what I'm doing here? I became Paroi's dad. Now, what in the world does that mean? Yosef did not become Paro's father. Yosef did not adopt Paroi. Yosef did not register Paroi as his adopted child. What does the Torah mean that Yosef became the father of Paroi? If we're able to define this word, we will now know what the Torah considers a father. What is the role of a father? Says Rashi, le'av, le'chover, friend. Pshutoi kamashmai. The role, the definition of father is not moira derech, not, tuck yourself in, not, why'd you come late to davening? Why aren't you learning more? Maybe that's one of the minor roles of a parent. It's not get a job. It's not for advice. The role of a father, definition of father. Says Reb Shimon Schwab in the main Beis HaShoeva, the definition of parent is lechaver, friend, ulepatroin, supporter, advocate, guardian. That's the definition of a father. And I think this is something that's a reality check and a very novel concept. I don't think most people, certainly most Yidden, would have defined that what a father is a chaver or a patron. So you say, I don't know, Is that really what Rashi means? Maybe Rashi is just defining the word Av in that particular pasuk. But how do I know that on a practical level, that is how a parent needs to conduct themselves? Let me share with you another source. Please take a look at number 13. Vayomer Yaakov le'echav. Yaakov says to his brothers, Liktu avanim, let's gather some stones. Does anybody know where's this pasuk written? Yaakov says to his brothers, let's gather some stones. First of all, Yaakov says to his brothers, Yaakov didn't have brothers. He had one brother, and he was not asking Esav to come from a faraway country and gather stones. Friends, who's Yaakov talking to? Vayomer Yaakov le'echav. Yaakov says to his brothers, says Rashi, Banav, his children. No, it does, but Rashi, it doesn't say that. It doesn't say Vayomer Yaakov libanav. It says Vayomer Yaakov le'echav. How does Rashi know that le'echav are his brothers, are his sons? It has to mean that. That means Rashi is telling us that Yaakov Avinu treated his children as his brothers, not as his children. Take a look again. I want you to see the words. Don't take my word on anything. So Rashi says, Heim banav, shahayu loy achim nigashim elav. They were his brothers to protect him, litzara ulamachama. So you say, I don't know, Rashi lived a very long time ago. Rashi's not a poisek. Rashi's just commenting on the pshuto shel mikra. Rashi's just telling us that in this particular pasuk, when Yaakov called his brothers, it means he called his sons because it can't mean brothers. Comes the Chida, Chaim Yosef David Azulai, and the Chida says, we learn from Rashi how to get along with your children. Rashi is not just being mefaresh pshuto shel mikra. Rashi is telling us the key of family dynamic, how a parent should act toward a child. Says the Heilige Chida in the Sefer Bris Olam, number 15. Lamadnu, we learn from here, Sheyakov Avinu hayamachshiv es banav ke'achav. Yaakov considered his children like his brothers. Meaning, if they said something to him, he wouldn't say, how dare you say that to your father? Don't you know who you're talking to? I brought you into this world, pal. No. You make believe like you're equal to them. Say, come on, no, that's not Pakavadik, that's not how we act. That's not how they did it in the Altahaim. I can only tell you what Rashi says and the Chida. Chida says, we learn from Rashi that if you want to get along with your kids, you treat them as equals to you. Listen to this, says the Chida. V'chein roi la'av sheyachshev. Now this is very important. This is not talking about little children. This is talking about, I would assume, teenagers. Because the Chida uses a lashon, v'chein roi la'av sheyachshev banav gedolim. Your older children, ke'ilu heim achiv. Says the Chida, you don't have to do this. But if you want to have a peaceful home, you want to have a tranquil home, bazeh yiyu sheketim v'sha'ananim. If you do this, you'll have peace and tranquility. Says the Chida, and I'm going to tell you a nice gematria to top it off. The pasuk says, "Hine matoivu manoim sheves achim gam yachad." Says the Chida, the gematria achim gam, who are also your brothers, banim. So you say, nice gematria Chida. Where did he get that from? Goes back 1,000 years. The Sefer Hasidim writes, the gematria gam achim gam is the gematria banim. So parents once came to Reb Shach. They're having trouble with their kid. And the kid was suffering from very overbearing parents. There is such a thing, they say, there exists in the world, parents who are very controlling. I never met any, but they say they exist somewhere. And Reb Shach heard them out. The parents said, look, it's our job. We have to tell the kid what to do, when to do it, how to do it. So Reb Shach said, Herzachayim. Parents are given two roles that are somewhat self-contradictory. On the one hand, the parent has to shower the kid with love and mercy and kindness, like it says, Kerachim av albanim. On the other hand, the parent has to teach the kid, Torah, manners, derech eretz. And the Gemara says that when you sit before your Rebbe, when you sit before the rabbi, when you sit before your teacher, the lips of the Talmidim should be dripping with sweat. Like the Gemara says, Zroik mara b'Talmidim. The rabbi should throw bitterness at the Talmid, meaning scare the living daylights out of them. The kids have to sit before the Rebbe, be'ema, be'yira, be'resas avaziyah. That's not saying that that's the way to do it today, but in the ideal form, Torah has to be given be'ema, be'yira. So how does a parent conduct himself to the child? Be'ava or be'yira? Says the Reb Shach, well, the Gemara already tells us, Smoil doicha, v'yamin mekarev. It's a dual role. The predominant attitude should be yamin mekarev. So the parents are listening, say, oh, well, we give him level. So it says Reb Shach, that was in the olden days. In the olden days, parents had a dual role. That's when the father and the mother were not only the moira derech of the kid, but they were also the Rebbe of the kid. So now they have to be the Rebbe and they have to be the parent. But says Reb Shach, there was a man who came along like 1,400 years ago. His name was Rabbi Shiur ben Gamla. And he made a takana that in every single city there has to be a yeshiva. At that point in history, the parents have given over to the yeshiva Limud HaTorah, Yirah Shamayim, and all the fear and awe and dread. And the job of a parent today, says Reb Shach, is only one thing. To shower the kid, be'ahava, 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 and nothing else. Whoa, sounds very new vogue, sounds very revolutionary. This is not my opinion. This is Reb Shach. He was an Orthodox Jew, actually. He was a Haredi. And he's the one who says that today... What? Yeah, that's true. They have no idea, actually. But it's in print. It's in the Sefer Lulei Serascha. But after you see all these Mar Makoimes and all these sources, so now the story is just illustrating the point. I will tell you, the most astounding thing maybe that I ever heard, and it's not on the sheet. I have something called the 10 Commandments, Luchos Shniyos. Maybe next year we'll do it. But I'm going to give away one secret. One of the leading Mekubalim today, Ram Gamliel Rabinovich, in his Sefer, Tiv HaTorah, writes the following by the Akedah. It's mind-boggling. Let me give you the following introduction. The Ribono Shalom comes to Avram Avinu, and he says, Vayomer Avraham. What does Avraham say to the Ribono Shalom when the Ribono Shalom calls his name the first time by the Akedah? What is the one-word response that the Ribono Shalom... Hineni. Right? Hineni. What does Hineni mean? Behold, here I am. What does Rashi say Hineni means? Lashon Anova, a language of humility. That means Rashi defines the word Hineni means humility. Who's talking to whom? Mi amar mi. God is talking to Abraham. Abraham responds with the word Hineni. Hineni means I am ready, I am mezuman, with great humility and with great hachna'ah. The next pasuk says, the Ribono Shalom, that Avraham Avinu turns to Yitzchak. He says, Yitzchak. And Yitzchak says yes. And Yitzchak says to his father, what word? Avi. Yitzchak says to his father, Avi. And Avraham says to Yitzchak, Hineni. What's going on? That doesn't make any sense. I understand that Avraham will tell the Ribono Shalom Hineni because Avraham is lowering himself, being machniah himself, submitting himself to the will of the Almighty God. So he responds with humility. But Yitzchak, his kid, is talking to the father. Why would Avraham say Hineni to Yitzchak? Did Avraham get confused who he's talking to? Says Ram Gamliel, we learn from here that the same way you need to talk to the Ribono Shalom be'anivus, just as important is to talk to your child be'anivus. The same way you need to lower yourself and humble yourself before the Ribono Shalom, you need to lower yourself before your kid. Say, come on, who says that? That sounds new vogue. Rashi says that. That's how Ram Gamliel reads Rashi. I do not tell you any of my own idea. I'm telling you a Rashi and Chumash. Says Ram Gamliel, he heard from his mother, that if the Aseres HaDibros were written today, they would have removed Kabed es avicha v'yasimecha, and they would have put in Kabed es bincha v'yasbitecha. Because in today's generation, the main thing that's lacking is the hineni the other way around. Not telling you my opinion. I'm telling you a Rashi on Chumash. Avraham says to Yitzchak, hineni. Because children today do not respond to Zroik Mara B'Talmidim. Okay, that's commandment number 1. You never heard that before? That's a Rashi and Chumash. The definition of Av, Lechaver Ulepatrein. Okay, here we go. Commandment number 2. So you heard a shiur, and you went to a shiur. Yeah, you drifted in, you drifted out, you took notes, you didn't take notes, you listened, you didn't listen, and you came home Friday night, and you heard a shiur about Lashon Hara. So you hear your kid say something, so you come home, oh, wait a second. So you take out some sheet, and you say, Lashon Hara is a good thing. I mean, it's a bad thing. It's a very bad thing. Your kid's looking at you. You don't mean what you say. You don't even know what Lashon Hara is. You're just lecturing the kid. Of what value does something have if you're merely saying it over? And the answer is, something that is just on your lips will never enter the other person's heart. The Alshich, a famous Alshich, a revolutionary Alshich, the Alshich says, Vishinantam levonecha, you will teach diligently to your child. It doesn't say, Vilamadata levonecha, to teach. It says Vishinantam, to teach diligently, sharply. Who remembers what 2 words precede the words Vishinantam levonecha? Number 18. V'hayu hadvarim ha'ela asher anoichi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha, followed by Vishinantam levonecha. Says the Alshich, how could a person ensure that the words that they say will enter the heart of the listener? And this is for a parent, this is for a teacher, this is for a Rebbe, this is for a speaker, this is for anything. Someone in business, how could you ensure that your words will have an impact and enter the other person's heart? Says the Alshich HaKadosh, wherever they come from, that is where they will end up. If they are merely al picha, al l'shoinecha, al sifasecha, then guess where they'll end up? They will end up on the lips, on the tongue, and the mouth of the other person, and they will have absolutely zero impact on them. The only way to make sure that the words that you say will enter the heart of the other person is if they're coming al levavecha, if it's dvarim hayotzim min halev, if it's words that emanate from your heart, they will enter the heart of the other person. So if you're going to come home and tell your kid something, and you don't believe it, and you don't mean it, don't waste your words. It's wasted breath, it's wasted time. They're not going to listen to a word you say. The only fighting chance you have to make sure that your words will be listened to is you better mean it, you better have a passion about it, and it better be resting on your heart. And if it's resting on your heart, it will impact somebody else. You could have 2 speakers, and I'll tell you a chiddush. You could have 2 speakers. One of them could be more polished, better vocabulary, better voice quality, better projection, and he will have less impact on the audience than somebody with lesser skills because to him it's only words. He's just reciting something. He's reciting a shiur, information that he read, heard, learned. For something to have impact, it has to be al levavecha, and then you could be sure it will be vishinantam levanecha. That's commandment number 2. Mean what you say. Be serious about it. It should be meaningful to you. If it's meaningful to you, it might be meaningful to them as well. Here's commandment number 3. You could tell your kids everything. And you can mean it. The truth is, only one thing is going to have an impact on them. Your personal example. They say, oh, I heard that a million times. I'm not here tonight to tell you good ideas or good thoughts. I'm here to show you where in Chazal, Chazal understand human dynamics, psychology, and where they give over to us the tools with which we could be successful. Do you remember before the Chet HaEgel, who did the avodah in the Mishkan? Who did the service? The B'chayrim. And God switched the procedure. He switched the protocol. And instead of the B'chayrim doing the avodah, who did the avodah in the Beis HaMikdash? Who did the avodah? The Leviim. And the Pasuk even says in Behaloischa that God says, let's have the Leviim do the avodah so that there won't be negaf, there won't be plague in the Jewish people. I'm going to tell you a fascinating chizkuni. Chizkuni is one of the Talmidim of Rashi. He very often quotes Rashi, one of the great Rishonim, Rav Chizkiyahu Chizkuni. Says the Chizkuni, you know why the Rebbeinu Shem changed the system? It's not just because the B'chayrim sinned at the Egel. There was a fundamental flaw in the original system. You know what the flaw is? So my kid's a B'char. So I say, kid, get your act together. You have a big job in this world. You have to do the Avodah. Tata, how am I going to do the Avodah? Oh, I don't know. You're going to go to school, and you're going to get a B'char to lecture you and to give you a class and to give you a demonstration how to do the Avodah. So the kid is sent off by his parents to B'char school, where you have a wonderful B'char, who's a great pedagogue, a great teacher, and he's teaching the B'char how to do the Avodah, how to do the Avodah, how to do the Avodah. And the problem is the kid's not going to learn a word. You know why? Because nobody really learns by listening to somebody talk or lecture or teach. Person only learns by what they see from people who care about them. And if this B'char's father is a second-born or third-born, then all he knows is his father doesn't know how to do the Avodah in the Mishkan. And when push comes to shove, he's going to make a blunder. And he's not going to do the Avodah properly. He's going to make an error in the Avodah. Because his father is not a B'char, and his grandfather is not a B'char. He's not going to get it down. So the Rebbe Shem said, scratch that. It ain't going to work. We have to change the system. From now on, the system is passed down from parent to child to grandchild. This way, every Levi who needs to do Avodah, it will be in his system. It will be coursing through his veins. It will be flowing in his blood. You know why? Because he didn't hear about it in school. He didn't go to a class about it. He wasn't lectured about it. He saw the Tata do the Avodah in the Mishkan. He saw his grandfather do the Avodah in the Mishkan. So they asked Rav Pam, in this generation, we all want our kids to have derech eretz, manners, courtesy, midos tovos. So how do you teach it? What do you tell them? Rav Pam said a very interesting thing. And this is a very important chiddush. Children don't care what you tell them. They don't care even what they see you do to other people. Meaning, if a child sees his parent is always polite, courteous, good-mannered to other people even in the house, but to them the parent is a bully, to them the parent is gruff, to them the parent is harsh, to them the parent is ill-mannered, the child learns one thing, that the way to talk to people is not to be courteous and to be ill-mannered. Says Rav Pam, children pick up only one part of the parent's conversation. Not how you talk to others, only how you talk to them. You speak to them, Shefala, Mamala, it's Friday night, Mommy's very tired. Could you please carry the plate back to the kitchen? I have to ask my child, please? Doesn't he know better? Get off get off the seat. Your mother just served you a full meal. Get off and clear off. The child then learns not to be polite, not to be courteous. But what do you mean? I'm a stand-up guy. I always speak politely and with courtesy to other people. Says Rav Pam, children only care about one thing. They have like a tunnel vision in terms of how they pick up information. They will only pick up your mode of behavior to them. If you act to them, and Rav Pam said as follows, very interesting thing. He said his mother he never heard his mother utter one ill-mannered word to the children. Not one word that was off, not one word that was angry. Every word she used was what he calls rein shebarain, pure of pure, the purest choice of words. Says Rapam that on a Friday afternoon, when things were hectic and things were busy, the mother would ask the child, could you please do me a favor, do me this one small little job? And the way the mother would shower the kid with praise, with such curse, such politeness, that's how kids are taught derech eretz. Not the way they see you act to other people, the way they see you act to them. You know, it's a big challenge. This is a big challenge. It's not as easy. See, on the one hand, the first rule is you got to be their best friend. You have to be their chaver, their closest, dearest friend in this world. These are things that are challenging in 2018. But again, I share with you Divrei Chazal. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we move on to the fourth commandment of raising children. The Gemara says as follows. It's a Gemara in Nedarim, Gemara B'Matzia. The Gemara says, Mipnei ma of the haaretz. Mipnei ma of the haaretz. Why was Eretz Yisrael destroyed? Who remembers this Gemara? What's the answer? Davar zeh nishal l'chachomim, l'neviim, l'malachei hashores. Nobody knew the answer. Ad she'omar HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What's the answer? Shaloi barchu b'Torah tchila. This young man knows. Shaloi barchu b'Torah tchila. They didn't make Birchas HaTorah. Nobody knew. Only HaKadosh Baruch Hu knew. They didn't make Birchas HaTorah. Comes the Levush, and Levush says, what are you talking about? Don't you know the Gemara in Yuma? The Gemara in Yuma says, why was the first Beis HaMikdash destroyed? Avodah Zarah, Gilui Arayos, Shvichas Damim. Nothing to do with Birchas HaTorah. The Gemara doesn't say Birchas HaTorah. How does the Gemara in Nedarim know? It's because Birchas HaTorah. That's not our tradition. Our tradition is because of the big three. So says the Levush, an incredible pshat. Says the Levush, the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed because of the big three. Avodah Zarah, Gilui Arayos, Shvichas Damim. But now we have a totally different question. I understand the temple. But here's the question. You know, while the temple stood, there were so many big tzaddikim, so many big Talmidei Chachamim. What happened to the next generation? Where did all the Talmidei Chachamim go? Where did all the tzaddikim go? Why was it that in the past there were so many tzaddikim and Talmidei Chachamim, and in the next generation there are no more Talmidei Chachamim, there are no more tzaddikim? I get the temple, but what happened to the people? Why isn't the Torah being passed down anymore? So what's the answer? They didn't make Birchas HaTorah. So why didn't the Nevi'im know? Why didn't the Malachim know? Why couldn't the Malachim come to Shul and see that they opened up the Siddur with Hanoi Sein Lasach Livina Lahavchim Ben Yom Uvein Laila, and they skipped Birchas HaTorah? The answer is very simple, says Levush. Of course they made Birchas HaTorah. Why do we make Birchas HaTorah? So what do you mean? Before I blow shofar, I make a bracha. Before I take lulav, I make a bracha. Before I eat matzah, I make a bracha. So before I learn Torah, I have to make a bracha. Wrong. It's not why you make Birchas HaTorah. You know why you make Birchas HaTorah? Because before you drink Snapple, you make a shahakon. Before you eat cake, you make a mazonos. And before you eat pizza, you make hamoitzi if you're having 2 slices. And before you learn Torah, you have to make Birchas HaTorah, because Torah is a hana. And if you don't treat Torah like a hana, then you're not understanding what Torah is. Torah is not a regular mitzvah. Shofar is just, you take it and you blow it, whether you enjoy it or not. Lulav, you pick it up and you shake it, whether you enjoy it or not. Torah is hana. The bracha on Torah is Birchas HaNehenen. When it says they didn't make Birchas HaTorah, it means they didn't understand that Torah is the greatest enjoyment in this world. And when a kid picks up that the father doesn't enjoy learning, So yeah, you have a father. He goes to Shiur every night. So the kid asks, where are you going? Oh, it's very schwer. It's a long day. And what can I do? I'm going to be moiser nefesh al kiddush Hashem, to go to a shiur and stay up, even though it's torturous, even though it's painful, even though I'm killing myself, even though I'd much rather stay home. But what can I do? Kach gozar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, like the para aduma, and I'm going out to a shiur. You know what the kid says? When it comes my turn, I'm moichel taivas. Who needs it? Well, I don't need to be moiser nefesh al kiddush Hashem. I'll do other mitzvahs. The only way Torah gets passed down to the next generation, more important than how many hours the father learns, more important than how many shiurim the father goes to, is the attitude the parent has toward learning Torah. Is it enjoyable? Is it geschmack? Is it the highlight of the day when the parent comes home and says a 2-minute Dvar Torah? Is he chalishing? Is he licking his chops? Whoa, what a geschmack of art! Or he's like, no, the halacha is at the Shabbos table. We say it Dvar Torah. Sit there right now. Okay, it's over. The kid's not interested. The important message is Torah is a hana, is a pleasure, is an enjoyment. If the kid detects that the parent enjoys limud Torah, yeah, I'm in. The kid said, I'm in. I'm in for it. That's what I want. That's the fourth commandment. If you want the Torah to be passed down, you have to somehow convey the attitude that it's something enjoyable. It's a hana. Okay, here's the fifth commandment. Now, this is not particular to parenting. It's with any relationship in life. Teacher, co-worker. And I read this many years ago. I actually read it in a biography. And this does not come from Chazal. So again, it's not necessarily on the same level as some of the other eitzos that we've mentioned. But it would seem to be very much oila ala das and oila ala seichel, and something very reasonable. So I'm my kids' mashgiach. I have to know exactly what they're doing. And if they're going to do something wrong, at the moment they're going to do something wrong, I'm going to jump in on the door and catch them red-handed. And this way they'll never do it again. You ready for this? Commandment number 5. Parent, teacher, any relationship. Never catch somebody doing something wrong. The moment you catch them doing something wrong, you lost them forever. You could know they did something wrong. You shouldn't let them know that you know. And let's explain. Every child has a sense of shame, a sense of wanting to do the right thing, and a sense of trying to preserve the reputation. If you're going to jump in on the room when the child is about to do that thing you don't want him to do, then the child has nothing stopping them from ever doing it again. Because once they know that you know, their reputation in their eyes is sullied in your eyes. So what's going to stop them from repeating? They have nothing to gain by not doing it again. But if you don't let them know that you know, so you know what? Fine, the Yetzer Hara got the better of them. And they slipped and they fell, and they know that they sinned. But as far as their mind, they don't know that you know. So they'll say to themselves, you know what? Daddy doesn't know I did it. Mommy doesn't know I did it. I really shouldn't have done it. I'm not going to do it again. Let them think of me as a good boy, as a good girl. But the moment that they find out that you found out, they have nothing to gain by not repeating the sin. This is the Das Torah of Rav Meir Chadash, the mashgiach of the Sabbatka Yeshiva. In fact, the story goes, and again, story is a story, that an informer from the yeshiva once came to the mashgiach and said, there's some Talmidim on Kikar Shabbos, they're hitching rides, Back in the day, that was the biggest avera, that's, hitching rides. Halavai. Halavai, that should be the problem today. So, Rav Meir Chadash quietly goes from a distance and he spots the kids and he turns around. So the informer says, so no, give it to them, tell them. Tell them. I know. They don't have to know that I know. Now again, maybe this doesn't apply in every circumstance, and I'm sure there are circumstances where they do need to know that, it's an idea. Again, of course, a person needs a very healthy dose of common sense, when to apply these rules, how to apply them, under what circumstances. But it's a svara. It's a svara yeshara. It's a good piece of advice. They don't need to know that you know everything. You need to learn the art of looking the other way, of ignoring, not paying attention to everything. So that is commandment number 5. Don't catch them red-handed. Okay, friends, we live in the age of skulos, right? Nowadays, it's all about the skula. You do this heebie-jeebie, and all of a sudden, you're going to make $1 million, get a shidduch, have children, all in the same day. There was somebody who was 110 years old, and they had twins, and they said, what happened? They said, when I called the tzedakah, I pressed 2 by accident. That's the age of skulos. So, Rav Pam would say, don't do skulos. Even if it's found in Rishonim. Don't do skulos. Because you're changing the religion. It becomes pseudo-Judaism. Instead of a person attaching themselves to the ikarim, limarat Torah, gmilas chasodim, bitachon, kedusha, tznius, it becomes, like the age of gimmicks. But if the skula is in Chazal, Rabbi say it's a different story. That's why you always have to know, it's a skula. Where does it say it? On a Parsha sheet or in the Gemara? You have to know where it comes from. If a Gemara, it's not a skula, it's Chazal. Chazal's Misinai. It comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. A skula for good children. In the Gemara. Says the Gemara as follows. Take a look at number 26. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi Amar, Kol haragil lasos tzedakah v'chesed, the Bach says. Number 26, Baba Basra, Testament base. Anyone who gets into the habit of doing tzedakah v'chesed, zoiche havin loy bonim, balei chachma, balei oisher, balei agada, will merit to have children who are talmidei chachamim, wealthy darshanim. So people want to know, up until my kids are already older. It doesn't matter. It's never too late. Your children, your grandchildren. It's a school on Chazal. That's someone who's roidev tzedakah v'chesed. Now the Chavetz Chaim writes in the Sefer Abbas Chesed, roidev tzedakah v'chesed doesn't mean that once a year you show up to Tomchei Shabbos parlor meeting and give an $18 check. Roidev tzedakah v'chesed means this is part of your personality. You're a kind of person who's always running after opportunities for tzedakah v'chesed. This is something mentioned in the Gemara, that if somebody does that, they will merit extraordinary children. Roidev tzedakah v'chesed. Comes the Chafetz Chaim, he says tremendous words. He says sometimes you have people, they're struggling to have children. They're struggling with infertility. And they spend millions of dollars on all kinds of schools, says the Chafetz Chaim, that have absolutely no basis. Why don't they just do what it says in the Gemara? The Gemara says that one who runs after tzedakah v'chesed will be zoicha not only to have children, extraordinary children. Chafetz Chaim says if you follow the words of Chazal, you could take it to the bank. Roidev tzedakah v'chesed. People have gemachs in their home. That is the ultimate segula for good children. Who says so? Where does it say? It's a Gemara. The Gemara says, someone who pursues tzedakah v'chesed is vouchsafed from Talmud Bavli to have banim balei chachma, balei oisher, balei drush. That's what the Gemara tells us. That's commandment number 6.
It's not only if you can handle having a gemach in your home.
I'm not telling anyone to have a gemach in their home. I'm just saying the reality is that the Gemara says someone who engenders this type of personality doesn't have to be a gemach in your home. If it's somebody develops this type of hanhaga where they pursue gemilas chasadim and tzedakah, the Gemara tells us havin lei banim tamei chachamim. Okay, number 7. Here's one more skula from the Gemara. Another skula in the Gemara. Gemara in Shabbos, Daf Chaf. Amar Rav Huna, Haragil b'ner havin le banim tamei chachamim. One who frequently lights candles will have children tamei chachamim. Who doesn't light candles? What's the Gemara talking about? Rashi says, Ner Shabbos, Ner Chanukah. Say, Ner Shabbos, Ner Chanukah. Everybody lights Ner Shabbos and Ner Chanukah. So apparently it means more than that. There must be a number of halachas that are relevant to Ner Shabbos and Ner Chanukah that should be adhered to, and by doing so, one is zoichet to banim tamei chachamim. Like what? Like what? Baking challah is wonderful. It's a beautiful mitzvah. I don't know that it's found in Chazal, that it's a school for this particular thing. It's a beautiful mitzvah. It's a mitzvah on a woman. All mitzvahs are. Now we're talking about the mitzvahs that Chazal tell us are specifically targeted toward the merit of having righteous children. I'll tell you a few interesting halachas. First of all, when you light the Ner Shabbos or the Ner Chanukah, we say Hadlaka Oisa Mitzvah. Hadlaka Oisa Mitzvah means that don't light the candle. Oh, it caught on fire. Next. You have to hold the candle there until most of the wick that will catch fire has caught. You hear this? Usually you light a candle and it catches fire, so you're on to the next. It's not good enough. It's not the halacha. The halacha is you have to hold the candle there until the majority of the wick that will burn. In other words, usually when the fire catches onto a wick, ultimately a certain percentage of the wick the fire will adhere to. It takes a few extra seconds until the fire spreads. You need to hold the candle there until the fire spreads to the majority of the place. The zman of the hadlaka. Why do women light 18 minutes before Shkia? Where does it come from? I don't know. That's what it says on the magnet. The magnet says. I mean, if a Parsha sheet is cut, like imagine the kedusha of a magnet. The reason is, there's an opinion in halacha, that Bein Hashmasha starts 3/4 of a mil before Shkia, 13.5 minutes before Shkia. And then on top of the Bein Hashmasha, they add on Tosefes Shabbos. So lighting at that time is considered a tremendous hiddur. So you say, okay, that's for the woman. What's the man's role in Hadlakas Neiros? So the Marsha says two things. The Marsha says something, and Rabbi Kiveger says something. The Marsha says, by all the other mitzvahs, it says, Zahir b'mezuzah, Zahir b'talis. By the Ner, it says, Ragil. Ragil means the woman lights, and the man reminds. The man's responsibility is to remind the wife to light at the correct time. But besides that, there's a very interesting Rabbi Kiveger Mishnayos. It's brought in the Mishnah Berurah. Rabbi Kiveger writes, it says, 3 things a man has to say in his home before Shabbos. Yisartem, Eravtem, Hedliku Esaner. Correct, Rabbi Kiveger. The language is not consistent. Yisartem, Eravtem, should say Hidlaktem. Why Hedliku es haner? Why such a lengthy expression? Says Rabbi Kiva Eger is a remez to the Zohar. The Zohar says that even though the woman lights the candles, the man sets up the Shabbos candles. Therefore, it says Hadliku es haner. You light, but I already took care of it beforehand. Might be a good idea. The Gemara says, husband and wife that are Zahir b'ner, having like banim tamei. Believe me, it's a lot easier to set up the candles than being buddies with your kid, you know. It's a lot easier to do that. If you have a choice, should I catch my kid red-handed? There's no way I could resist. Glatstein, I'm only going to do one of the things that you said today, if that much. This is the easiest one, set up the candles. You could do it Wednesday night. Your wife will be really happy. Imagine Wednesday night. Do it Sunday night. Okay. Here's the toughest one. You ready? Commandment number 8. Commandment number 8. Another Gemara. Did you hear what the rabbi said at the drasha? I mean, you got to be kidding me. He said that. Doesn't he understand? What do you mean? What do you want him to? You want him to say that talking is okay? Yeah, but he has to know his olam, and he has to know who he's dealing with. Who does the rabbi think he is? And the kids are listening. And what do the kids learn? that you have no respect for Talmidei Chachamim. Yeah, the rabbi's a Talmid Chacham, but how he handles himself, that's a different story. He shouldn't, I can't believe it. Says the Gemara, your attitude toward Talmidei Chachamim will be what the decisive factor is in how your children will turn out. Really? Yes. Says the Gemara, Amar Rava, it's Gemara in Shabbos, Dirachim Rabbanon Havilei Benin Rabbanon. If you love Talmidei Chachamim, your children will be Talmidei Chachamim. Says the Gemara, if you honor Talmidei Chachamim, your son-in-laws will be Talmidei Chachamim. If you fear Talmidei Chachamim, you'll become a Talmid Chacham. Interesting. Now, the hour is late. The Maharal has a very profound explanation for all of the above. But the bottom line is, however it works, why it works, and their explanations and their rationale and their reasons. But the bottom line is what the Gemara says. Somebody who loves Talmidei Chachamim will have children Talmidei Chachamim. It will impact how the kids will turn out. Your attitude toward your Rebbe, your Rav, your Maggid Shiur, your children's Rebbe, your children's Maggid Shiur will affect how the kids turn out. It's a Gemara in Shabbos. Okay, number 9. This is a good one. Number 9, Rav Pam once got up, and Rav Pam said, in the name of the stipler, that good children, 50% shalom bias and 50% something else that we're going to get to soon. So I heard that, 50% shalom bias? Ken Zayin, could be. Did the stipler really say that? So I couldn't help myself. About 17 years ago, I wrote a letter to Reb Chaim Kanievsky. I said, Reb Chaim, they say over that Reb Pam said, that the stipler said, that good children is 50% shalom bias. And Reb Chaim said, Loi shamati, I never heard such a thing. But Reb Pam did say it. I heard from people that Reb Pam did say it. So whether the stipler said it, I'm sure the stipler must have said it. Reb Chaim never heard him say it. I think it's a davar pashat. You know, they say by Ben Saro Moira that for a kid to be a Ben Saro Moira, the father and mother have to have the exact same voice. So then nobody ever became a Ben Saro Moira. No one in the world has the same voice as anybody else. What do Chazal mean that the husband and wife have to have the same voice? So the Baalei Musar say that if the parents are always arguing, and one parent wants one thing, and the other parent wants another thing, it's not the kid's fault that he's a Ben Sara Moira. The only time we could blame the kid for being a Ben Sara Moira is if there's shalom bias in the house, and he's still a Ben Sara Moira. But if the parents don't have the same voice because they can't get along, the kid's not a Ben Sara Moira, the parents messed up the kid. It's a davar pashat. Good children is very much dependent on shalom bayis. That's what Rav Pam said. Rav Pam said, the stipler said it, that as much as 50% of the outcome of a child is dependent on shalom bayis. Okay, here's the last one, the grand finale, and probably the most important ingredient in raising children. Let's start with the medrash. As I said, if it's in a medrash, you could take it to the bank. The Medrash Yalkut Shimoni says as follows. There was once upon a time a kohen, a righteous kohen. And this righteous kohen was a God-fearing Jew. And he had 10 children, 6 boys and 4 girls. And what did he do? He prayed and he prayed and he davened and he rolled in the dirt and he davened 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 that his kids should be God-fearing Jews. And then one day he gets a message from Ezra. Let's go back. We're going from Babel. We're going back to Israel. And he went back to Israel with his family, and he was zoicha to see all of his children, kohanim gedolim, grandchildren, kohanim gedolim, for 50 years, and he did not leave this world until he saw all of his descendants, Yireim Ushleimim. The Medrash would not tell us the story for no reason. What's the Medrash teaching us? The Medrash is teaching us that the most important ingredient in children, in grandchildren, in great-grandchildren is tefillah, tefillah, tefillah. Story goes that they visited a brisker Rav, and a certain Rosh Hashiva came to visit brisker Rav. This Rosh Hashiva, all of his children went off the derech. And he sees the brisker Rav sitting around the table with his boys, learning with each one according to their level. And the Rosh Hashiva was like, he couldn't believe it. He says, brisker Rav, how do you do it? How do you do it? What eitzah do you have? What were your methodologies? And the brisker Rav said, there are no methodologies and there are no eitzahs, only tehillim and tiras. That's the only advice. Listen carefully. It's never too late, and it's never too early. The brisker Rav said, parents, how do they rock their kids to sleep at night? Lullaby and good night. Right? They sing songs about people rolling down hills and breaking their heads open. That's how kids go to sleep. They want to know, whoa, my kid has nightmares. Well, what do you think? The last thing they heard before they went to sleep is somebody cracking their skull open. Says the brisker Rav, I was never so foolish to sing nursery rhymes to my kid. Every time I rocked my kid to sleep, I said to him that the kid should be a God-fearing Jew. Says the brisker Rav, never in my life did I daven one dry-eyed Shemona Esrei. Never in my life was I not yored demois that my children should be Yirei Shemayim. So when is a good time to daven? It's always a good time. I like to say, you're doing carpool, you're dropping your kids off to yeshiva. Oh, you have a moment. Use the time. Say a kapitel tehillim. It's an opportunity to daven. Your child should grow up, should enjoy learning, should have Yirei Shemayim, should have midos tovos. There are 3 designated times in daily tefillah to daven for one's children. The Shlach HaKadosh writes, take a look at number 39. Tamid tia tefillah shegura b'fi avaim. It should always be fluent in the mouth of a father or mother, l'hispal alzar, meaning it's not sometimes, once in a while, when I'm in the mood. It should be fluent. What should you daven for? Sheyu loimdei Torah, that they should learn. B'tzadikim, b'alei midos tovos. But specifically, the Shla writes there are 3 intervals. Number 1, Berchas HaTorah. When you say the words, V'niya anachnu v'tze'etzo'enu v'tze'etzo'e amcha be'zo kulanu yoidei shemecha, that me, I, we, and our descendants and our grand-descendants, that is a key interval. The second opportunity, in Ahava Rabbah or Avas Olam, when you say V'sein b'libeinu lahavin or lahaskel, God, please give us the intellect to understand and comprehend. That's a key interval to daven for the success of one's children. And finally, at the end of Uval Tzion, when you say the words Laman, Loi, Niga, Larik, Loi, Neled, Lebahala, that we should not have put in the effort in vain, that all of our efforts in Amelos should have been productive. This is not only a Shlach HaKadosh, it's codified in the Mishnah Berurah, word for word, that a parent should accustom themselves to this practice. 2 quick stories and I'll let you go. When I was learning in Eretz Yisrael, I had the privilege to get a bracha from one of the last Talmidim of the Chafetz Chaim, Rav Mordechai Zuckerman. He was nifter a few years ago. The last Talmid of the Chafetz Chaim. Rav Zuckerman was once interviewed, and Rav Zuckerman was asked, the Chafetz Chaim lived in a generation of all-time great tzaddikim, and yet he was sort of a notch above. What was it? How did he take it the extra mile? How did he reach that extra step above and beyond all the Gedolim who lived in the time? One of the things that Zuckerman said was the tears of his mother. The tears that his mother shed, that's what put the Chafetz Chaim, that's what gave him the edge. He said the Chafetz Chaim was once presented with his mother's tear-drenched Tehillim, and the Chafetz Chaim was very moved. He says, this is where I come from. Let me conclude by sharing with you my all-time favorite Gadol story. So 2 parents once came to the Stipler. Stipler, please give us advice. What do we do? I'm available in a minute when the share is over. So They asked the stipler, "Nu, what could you tell us? What could we do for our children? Nu, give us an eitzah." The stipler said, "There are no eitzahs. The only eitzah is tefillah." So the parents said, "We davened already." Stipler says, "You davened already? You know for how long a parent needs to daven? Even until the child is a little bit older." So the parent said, "Really?" The stipler said, "Look, you see my chayimol? Every day I daven that chayimol should be a Talmid Chacham." Chayimol, Reb Chaim Kanievsky, was already 52 years old. He was already a Gadol Adar. And the stipler says every day he davens that his son should be a Talmid Chacham. So Rabbi Glatstein, here's the happy recap. Number one, I can't do it like a micro machine guy, but we'll do it as best as we can. The first one is be your kid's best friend. Number two, you tell them something, you better mean it. Number three, lead by example. Number four, show how much you enjoy learning. Number five, don't catch them red-handed. Number six, engender, develop the pursuit of tzedakah v'chesed. Number seven, be careful with the Shabbos neiros, with the Chanukah neiros. Number eight, show your love of Tamei Chachamim. Number 9, Shalom Bayis. And finally, Tefillah, Tefillah, Tefillah. And the zchus of coming together to try to hear a few good ideas. May the Rosh Hashanah answer all of our tefillos. May we all see tremendous nachas from all of our children.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.